What is up, fam? Welcome back to my page. If you are brand new here, my name is Bree. I have been in the fitness industry now for about 15 years, actually maybe longer than that, which is just absolutely insane to me. I am now a mom, a brand new mom of 2 under 2, which has just been a whirlwind of emotions and feelings. And we are going through that entire postpartum journey. I have 2 mountain dogs, Luna and Leo, who are literally lap dogs and the most friendly dogs in the entire world, but they will sit on your freaking lap weighing about 120 pounds each. And we love to share healthy recipes, books, which we are going to talk all about today. I feel like it is part of my identity is just reading as many books as I possibly can. So we're going to go over some of my favorite books that we've read today. And it's honestly, as a mom and who works full time as a nutrition coach inside of our app, who does follow along workouts, it is like, you will not see me move faster to get those kids down to bed, to shower and do my face skincare routine and freaking grab my Kindle or grab my book to wind down for the night. You will not see me move faster. I do all of the CrossFit competitions. I work out on a regular basis, but get me to that book and let me wind down for the night every single night. That's when my agility kicks in. So let's go into it a little bit and make sure to like, subscribe, comment down below if you have read any of these, but we're doing a full little recap. So like I said, I have read 28 books so far this year. And let me preface, my goal, I always make a goal around this, was to read 30 books for the year, which I thought was being pretty dang ambitious, you know, having another baby, Blair. So if you didn't know, my 2 kiddos are Brady and Blair. Blair is now a month old, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to top last year's book read. So let's, you know, knock it down by 10 books and then be a little bit realistic. But we are cruising through these because guess what? A majority of the time I read for about 30, 40-ish minutes right before I go to bed. And then I also read when I'm feeding Blair in the middle of the night. So her feedings take about 45 minutes. So every single feeding, every 2 to 3 hours, I just pop open my Kindle and I'm flying through books. So I will also state that a lot of the books that I have read, if you recognize some of these titles, they are freaking massive. They are massive. So when some of these, you know, book talkers or bookstagrams are saying that they're at like 150, what I really want to know is, how thick are those books? Have you literally picked up a Throne of Glass series? Because those books are literally this big. They are over 1,000 pages. So I'm not really taking in the consideration of how many books I've read, but can we take in like total pages or something along those lines? But we are going to go through them and I'm going to give you guys some of my favorite 5-star ones that you guys need to absolutely grab if you have not read them, and comment down below if you have read some of these, which ones you're adding to your to be read list and which ones are your absolute favorite that you have read. Because in this community, these real mom clubs, let's just pass around the books that like take us out of this world and let us cool down, like unwind, and you know, maybe find a book boyfriend, who knows. It's because Brandon would be like, he would actually die. Brandon's my husband, if you didn't know. He would actually die if I said that, but he laughs about it every single time. So here are the books that we are going to go through, or the books that I have so far read, and then let me dive into some. Number 1, out of that list that I just showed you, if you have not read The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. Guys, this book is to die for. Literally, it had me smiling, it had me laughing, it had me crying, it had me sobbing like a little girl, it had me wanting to stay up all night long, it had me go through every single emotion that you possibly can have. And no one warned me, because I was freshly postpartum when I started reading this, and no one warned me that you should not read it postpartum when your hormones and your emotions are already through the roof. But I cannot recommend this book more. It is probably my all-time favorite book of all time. My all-time favorite book of all time. Nice, Brie. It has knocked down Firefly Lane, and if you have read Firefly Lane, it is an oldie, but it is a goodie. It's not even on this list. I read it probably 10 years ago, but that has probably been my favorite book for years now. And this one, at the very top. I cannot recommend. I fell in love with the characters. And there's kids involved. Anytime a book has kids in it, oh, my heart, it just steals it, obviously, because I'm a mom of 2 under 2. But the love between it, so ultimately is a military-based book. And I can't give it all away. You guys have to read it. But ultimately, one of the characters comes back to take care of his best friend's sister, who is going through the freaking ringer with her 2 twins, running her business. I love that is also in Colorado. I need to look up if Rebecca Yarros, the author, is from Colorado, because the majority of her books are from Colorado. And it's in Telluride, Colorado, which I've been there before. So I kind of have like, I don't know, a nostalgia maybe of it being in Colorado. So I took that away too, but ultimately he is working to help his best friend's sister go through these life events, and they end up, you know, hating each other, loving each other, going through all those amazing emotions, and it just rips at your heart, and you just love their love so dang much and how they are living their life. So I cannot say enough great things about this, and it kind of goes back and forth between different history points. So at one point they were writing letters, and then the next point they're, you know, in person together. So anyways, when you read it, you will understand. But this is hands down 5 out of 5 stars. I have no complaints. I love this book. I will reread it over and over and over again. And if you have not read it, you guys have to. Okay, number 2. These aren't in any specific order or in any specific place by any means. I had to start off obviously with my very favorite one, The Last Letter, but the next one is another Rebecca Yarros book. We are becoming very big fans of Rebecca Yarros over here, and that would ultimately be The Things We Left Unsaid, because wow, guys, I would say this one's definitely 4.5 out of 5 stars for me, and one that I would absolutely recommend, absolutely read again. What I love so much about this one is there's 2 different love stories going on. So it is military based once again. So one of those love stories is during World War II, and one during present day. Ultimately, the gist of this story was that Georgia's great grandma passed and left a manuscript of like her life, this love story, and it was completely unfinished. So they hired a writer in to finish the manuscript and ultimately publish it, because it's absolutely amazing. But they had to figure out kind of what route they wanted to go to finish the story, and to ultimately give this love what it deserves. So obviously 2 different love stories, 2 different time frames. You're bouncing back and forth between each of those love stories, but also the perspective of these different characters, which I loved. Anyways, from there, Rebecca Yarros absolutely crushed it. She also wrote Fourth Wing, which I had no idea about. So if you haven't read Fourth Wing, obviously not on this list. I read it when it first came out, and those are 2 completely different style books. I honestly didn't even realize that she had other books. I totally started with her books of Fourth Wing, that whole series, and then realized like the connection between this author. So if you liked Fourth Wing because that book was crazy trending, and you liked that type of writing, or her writing style, I guess, you definitely see it in these other books. These ones are much more real life and love based over the fantasy of Fourth Wing. So highly recommend this book. Could not talk more about it. Because the ending just drops your jaw, guys. Like, I can't stop thinking about it. And I read it a few weeks ago. I finished reading it a few weeks ago. And when I finished it, and I say my jaw dropped. I did not expect the ending whatsoever. So if you are someone who needs a book that it's like, that came out of nowhere, how did I not catch that type feeling book? Like, this is it. It did take me a little bit longer to get into than the very first one of The Last Letter by her, but I will say the ending I absolutely loved, I absolutely adored, and could not recommend more. Okay, number three. And like I said, these are not in any specific order, but I'm highly recommending these books. Binding 13. So I have yet to read the other books in this universe. So it's not necessarily a series, but you meet a lot of different characters. Some of the additional books are about those characters, or you get them from different perspectives. So I haven't read any of those yet. There's apparently 7, I believe 7 out. And then there's a whole, she actually just released a lot more of the books that are coming within this series or within this universe. So I will absolutely be reading all of them. I can't wait to jump into the second one. Actually, I'm about to nosedive into it like right away. I just finished Binding 13 and I cannot stop thinking about it. Would it be at the top of this list if I had finished it a while ago? Yes. Yes, it would. Let's be real. Because, and it's so hard. It's so hard because it's so funny. I talk to my husband about all of these books, right? He's always like, how's your book? What's happening in it? And we were sitting there talking about Binding 13, and I was sitting there reading. He was playing his game. We do this every single night just to unwind when we put the kids down. And he's like, well, what's happening in your book? And when I'm talking about Binding 13, I'm like, honestly, like nothing. Nothing's really happening in the book, but I am so addicted to these characters and what's going to happen and how they're going to live their life and what's going to happen next. And so when I tell him like, well, nothing's really happening in this book, but you fall in love with the characters and how they're falling in love, it just has my heart and I'm smiling so big. Ultimately, one girl, the main character, is getting bullied. She switches schools. And then ultimately on her very first day gets kind of bullied again. She actually just gets hit in the back of the head and gets concussed by this rugby player. Turns out he's a big hot shot. He, is going to play professional rugby. And that's another thing that I absolutely love about this book is that it's more based in Europe. So a lot of their words are like a little bit different than what we use here in America. So it kind of makes it fun. Like, for instance, they say knickers, which I just crack up. Like, there I am reading my Kindle and just like giggling when they're saying knickers. But ultimately, that's one of my favorite things about this book too. But they end up kind of, going through high school together, and it's funny. I'm sitting there smiling. I'm sitting there laughing. I'm sitting there like so upset about some of these situations that this girl is going through getting bullied. But this guy named Johnny, the rugby player, comes in and kind of comes to her rescue multiple times. And of course, he kind of, starts falling in love. But highly recommend this book. And like I said, there's a full universe of them. So I cannot wait to jump into the next ones. I will absolutely keep you guys up to date if these types of videos are something that you want to do. I just find it so relatable that like so many of us moms, we have such a crazy busy day. We're working all day, we're chasing the kids around, and we need time to unwind and take it for ourselves. So I feel like every mom out there, or everyone in general, just needs a good book recommendation. So number 3 would be Binding 13, that I am giving a 5 out of 5 star because for some reason. Okay, number 4. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know where to start with these freaking books. And I'm just gonna put them all in there because maybe this is cheating. You guys let me know if this is cheating down below, because I'm just going to put the entire Throne of Glass series. There are 7 books. 7 books, I believe. Or is there 8 books? This book I literally started, or this series I literally started in December and finished it in like July. It took me eternity. Let me just say, there are multiple ways to read this series with Assassin's Blade. So look it up. Based on the experience that you want to have when you're reading this series, Assassin's Blade can be read first, second, third, or fourth, I believe. I did it the traditional way, as it is a prequel, and did it as the very first book, and I highly recommend this. I loved it this way. I thought it was fantastic this way. And I give huge credit to Sarah J. Maas, the author, about how she went about this series, because one, I think it is incredible that you can choose the way that you want to read the series. So you can do that very Assassin's Blade in different forms. And then also there are a book that you can also tandem read. So 2 books that you can switch back and forth, and I'll try and put it up where you can, read certain chapters in this book and read certain chapters in this book. And that's what I started with doing. However, I do not recommend doing the tandem read. To each their own. I know some people really, really loved the tandem read. I think it completely slowed me down. I think it was really challenging to think like, okay, once I get to this chapter, I have to move to this chapter. Once I finish that chapter, I have to move back to this book and read that chapter. I probably got 3/4 of the way between both books with that and was like, okay, screw this. I am just reading the first book and then the second book. And I flew through the last fourth of each book. So much better, so much easier, so much more enjoyable. And then, you move on to the very, very last book, and loved that book as well. So for my personal experience, it put me into a reading rut when I was doing the tandem read. And then when I was like, okay, I'm dropping that, just reading and enjoying the process, that's when I started loving the books a lot more. So to each their own again, but I think it's completely super, super talented between the author of how you can choose the experience that the reader is going to have with that very first book of Assassin's Blade, and then also decide to do a tandem read. So I thought it was great. The majority of the other books, it's great too, because you kind of go through those character perspectives, and just like a series with all of these, of course, the series is massive. So expect to take time for those build-up chapters and to really understand the characters and get to know them. But by the end of it, I was like bawling my eyes out that it was over. I felt so lost in what to read, like a book hangover. I don't like to call it a book rut, because I feel like that is a book that doesn't want you to read again. But I was just so lost in what to read next, because I had just been in this other world with all these other characters, and it was a good amount of fantasy. I feel like some take the fantasy perspective way too far, and then some it's not enough, where this one was just enough to really have. I do wish that the assassin from the first book kind of continued on, but the things that this character went through, it's just, I can't recommend this series enough, and it had my heart. And then I know that, of course, you can go into Akatar from Sarah J. Maas, and then you can also go into Crescent City with Sarah J. Maas. I would say that Throne of Glass is probably my favorite so far out of them. I read Akatar a really long time ago, so maybe I need to reread those. And then I've not read the last Crescent City, so I can't say the full thing there. But not least is Powerless. And if you 5 out of 5 stars, hands down. Again, more of a fantasy love book, but the ending just had me diving into the next one. I could not buy that book on my Kindle fast enough to start the second one. And it's very good in between of that fantasy world as well. I didn't want it to be too fantasy. I didn't want it to be not fantasy at all. But if you are a fan of Divergent, Red Rising, Hunger Games, you're gonna absolutely love this series, and I cannot wait until the third book comes out. So stay tuned for that one. But I gave this book series a 5 out of 5 at both books because I thoroughly enjoyed them. I'm not allowed, am I allowed to, this is definitely more than 5 if we're counting series, but I think it counts because it'll keep you guys busy for a while. What is happening to my voice? It'll keep you guys busy for a while, so I'm gonna count it as 5 books that you guys can read. But Throne of Glass alone will keep you busy forever. But Powerless is my next one, and it's quick, simple read, but also you just dive in full-heartedly and just love the characters so much. It's kind of set in very similar to Hunger Games, where there's kind of these off different lands, and they kind of all have their own struggles. And then there's this kingdom, of course, with people who have powers, and they're pulling in these people that have to compete into these games, and it's just really interesting. It had a lot to do with the Hunger Games for me, but new, up and coming, different twists and turns, and I absolutely loved it. So hopefully you guys kind of loved this. Let me know down below if these are contents that you want to see. I read so many books. Like I said, we're like, you know, a little over halfway through the year, but I am now flying through them. And I just finished that Binding 13, now going on to the rest of that universe. So I will keep you guys posted, of course, with those books as well. But I would love to hear down below your favorite books. What's on your to be read, if you've read any of these, and of course, if you like this kind of content, because I love sharing fitness recipes, mom tips and tricks. However, I feel like books are really, really close to my heart, and just a way that I can escape and unwind and relax. And hopefully you guys enjoy that as well. And if it's been a while since you've read a book, grab one of these, because I guarantee you it will put you into the reading mood, and maybe it will re-spark or rekindle some of that love for you. Maybe it's, you know, I talk to a lot of people and they're like, you know, I haven't really read since high school or since those mandatory books or anything along those lines. And I'm like, no. That is not the reading that we're talking about. We are talking about reading to dive into another world and to unwind, rather than writing an essay about it. So if it's been a while that you've read anything, grab one of these, because they are going to hook you and you are going to start loving reading. And if you need some book recommendations, check the comments down below, and maybe we can just keep an ongoing tab of like everyone's favorite books and start a little book community there. So I love you, moms. I love you, fam. Thank you so much for watching. I always post Mondays at 4 o'clock Mountain Time, and I will see you guys next time.